All right, I guess it's time to start. My name is Gary Elfring, and I run a software company called Elfring Fonts. We do sort of font-related things, but basically it comes down to barcoding software, check writing software, and other miscellaneous things like that. I also, hopefully you've heard about Stack Exchange, which is a sort of a question and answer community which has large numbers of specialized sort of user groups, and you can ask questions about different topics in each one of these groups. And I'm one of the moderators for the HighTech startup section. And in this talk, I'm going to mention the word product over and over again. And if you're making a service or an app or something different, just think of the word product as interchangeable with whatever it is you're doing, because that's basically what we're talking about. The advice here should apply to everybody. And so this is going to be a discussion of high-tech business myths, and you see these come up all the time, especially on startups, where people come up with a brilliant business plan, and it's all based on something that is just completely wrong or doesn't apply to them. And there are 5 basic groups of business myths. And there are ones that are based on ideas. Does your idea actually have value? My idea might be stolen. There are ones that are based on people and their actions, that failure is the best teacher, for example, or that there are people that are just the driving force. Steve Jobs, I am Steve Jobs, and I'm going to get this done. There are generalized business myths that just give you completely random information about business that may apply to some kinds of businesses, but not yours. And if you follow the wrong advice, you end up with a business that fails. There are marketing myths that have to do with advertising. And there are also technology myths that tell you a lot about or give you misinformation about how technology works. And technology has something called path dependence that we'll talk about that is very, very important. And we're going to start with instead of going strictly by topic, we're going to start with some of the very most popular myths that are kicking around. And number 1 is my idea is going to make me rich. You see this all the time and on startups. This is the basis of my business. I'm going to get rich. Well, it doesn't seem like a brilliant idea to start with. If that's your goal, then how committed are you to your actual product or service or whatever? Is your actual product going to work? Is your idea necessary or even sufficient to make a product that works? And is your idea original? Are you copying something that somebody else has already done? Hundreds of people might have thought of your particular idea before you came up with it and ruled it out or tried it and failed. And then now you've come up with the same brilliant idea that other people have come up with, and it's going to make you rich. Well, the idea of money and business typically don't go well together in an entrepreneurial startup. If you're not committed to your actual product and you're just worrying about the money and selling out, your product's going to suffer. Another really, really popular myth that we see all the time is the myth of the graph. And this is shown in a ton of different business plans. And you'll always see this graph that looks just like this. And this is your time axis. As time goes on, you're going to get rich up here. And this is over here is either your profit, your sales, the number of customers, the number of conversions. And the first thing, if you ever want to think about things, think about them skeptically. There's something fundamentally wrong. Well, actually, there are a number of fundamentally wrong things with this graph. Number 1, it sort of assumes that the day I started my business, I had a profit or I had customers. And unless I bought somebody else's business and started at that point, that can't possibly be true. So really, the graph should look like that. And we still have this exponential growth up here. And the only thing in nature that I've ever seen that does that is people pitching Ponzi schemes to you. Because everything has some kind of limit built into it. So really, the graph looks like this. Every product has a beginning where you don't have any sales. It's starting out down here. It has some point, come on, laser, where it tapers off, and eventually it's actually going to go down. Your products have finite lives, and they die. And if you're a car maker, well, you had a model, and that model worked really well, but nobody's buying Model Ts anymore. They don't make Model Ts. That's gone. We've come out with a new version of the car, which is very, very different. So compare the two business plans. We have the great one up here that is what's used to pitch to investors or to people you're trying to get to join your company. And then we have reality, which looks like this. So don't believe any business plan or anybody who's pitching you that I want you to join my company and we're going to get this gigantic number of sales and everything's going to work out great. Another really popular idea is that technology doesn't really matter all by itself. That everything's going to go well with our development of this great new product. And in reality, in technology, there's something that's very important that's called path dependence. For example, when the typewriter was invented, we had typists who came out and they quickly learned how to type, and the mechanics of the typewriter at the time were pretty piss poor. And as the typists got better, they jammed the keys together on the typewriter. So how do you fix that with technology? You design a typewriter where you mislay out all the keys on the keyboard, which is what we're using to this very day. We have the QWERTY keyboard. They misdesigned all the keys, put them in the wrong places, so the typist had to slow down. So people who bought those typewriters for their employees found that the typewriters weren't jamming anymore because the typist couldn't type very fast. So that product got a really good reputation. And people bought more and more of them. And of course, the typists got fast quickly, and they started jamming the keys anyway. But by that point, everybody was using the QWERTY keyboard, and that was it. That's how all keyboards are. There are better keyboards. There's the Dvorak keyboard, which was designed based on the frequency of letters in the alphabet, and trained people can type much faster on it. But it doesn't exist. You go out and try and buy one. So that's one example of path dependence. Technology went in a certain way, and once that happened, you can't go back. People make a choice. It could be there are two competing products, X and Y. And product Y costs just a tiny bit less to manufacture than product X. But for some reason, people preferred product X. And as people prefer it, they buy more of it. Well, then the price of product X can go down. And if it goes down, it tends to drive customers to buy that product. And eventually, so many people are buying product X that they can make it for half the price of the first product Y. And that just drives more and more sales. And eventually, we're down a path where that's what everybody is using. Another good example of path dependence and also the wonders of technology is the Beta versus VHS tape recorders for videotape. And Beta rushed out to get their product out, and they knew VHS was coming out. They had to beat them. They got out a year ahead of VHS. And in order to do that, they made a tape machine that could only record 1 hour-long video. And that turns out to be kind of a big mistake because video recordings are used to record TV shows, that kind of thing, which an hour seems fine, but they're also used for movies. And you can't put a movie onto a 1 hour Betamax tape. So a year after Betamax came out with that, VHS tapes came out, and the first thing they could do was they could record for 2 hours, which means they could put almost any movie in the world onto those tapes. And they would edit movies down to 2 hours. It's really kind of hard to edit a movie down to 1 hour for Betamax. So the market just shifted to VHS, and that was the end of the Betamax. It just sort of died a noble death. And finally, there are some other brilliant ideas for the development of software. Microsoft, which really has never had any great ideas, they tend to just take other people's ideas, came out with, as you should all know, MS-DOS for the IBM PC. And what was so brilliant about their strategy? Well, at the time, it seemed like a really, really dumb idea. There were 9,000 different people making computers, hundreds of operating systems. There was a well-established operating system, CP/M, and Microsoft's operating system, MS-DOS, was basically just a very simple version of CP/M, which already existed and was on a ton of machines. What did IBM do that was brilliant instead of having brilliant technology? They negotiated a deal with IBM, and in the deal, they got two concessions. They were first going to be the exclusive operating system for the IBM computer, and since we had all these hardware manufacturers all competing with incompatible computers, having a big computer vendor standardizing things seemed like a great place to have your operating system. And the second thing they did that was truly brilliant was they got IBM to agree that their operating system wasn't exclusive to IBM. It could work on they could sell it to anybody for anybody's computer. So they built an entire new market for operating systems and built a gigantic company. Any questions so far? All right, we can move on to another advertising myth. This one is also very popular, and each one of these key points is something that somebody will tell you. If you build the best thing, people will just flock to you. You don't need any kind of marketing, or a great product is enough, or word of mouth is going to sell my product. And these are all basically examples of the exact same thing. It's typically a programmer or an engineer who doesn't know anything about marketing or advertising or business, and it's wishful thinking. It's not going to help you, and it will probably hinder you in the long run. Some of the problems with this approach to marketing is, how do people actually find your product the first time? If you're going to do it by word of mouth, who buys the first one? How fast do people spread the message of your machine, of your piece of product, software, service to other people? How long is it going to take for that to build you some kind of customer base? And what's it going to actually cost to get each one of these customers? Let's go back to the topic of idea myths again, because there are lots of different ideas. Here's a question for you. What's the value of an idea? Do ideas actually have any intrinsic value? The thoughts pop in and out of your head every day. Are those worth something? Or is it only the implementation of an idea, when you actually take what you thought of and do something with it, turn it into something that actually can be sold or used by other people? Also, along the idea of, or the basic premise of ideas, can you actually own an idea? If you've just thought of something in your head and it's only there, that is your property. Once that idea is out, what's to protect somebody from taking it, which we'll discuss a little bit more. But there are three major forms of protection plus an extra add-on one. There are patents. If you actually can get down to an implementation of your idea, you can patent it, although there are drawbacks to that. You can trademark, copy advertising words that relate to your idea, and you can copyright things if you have, say, source code for a software product. Those are pieces of protection for an idea. You can also do something that's called a trade secret, which is you keep your idea secret within perhaps your company, a small group of people. But the problem with that is that if it becomes not a secret anymore, your idea is not protected. And the problem with all the other patents, trademarks, and copyrights are that in the end, they rely on litigation and lawyers to get anything done, to protect you. So if you're a big company, you can sue people. If you're a little company and somebody steals something, do you even have the means, or a beginning company, to do anything about it? And the answer is probably no. Another idea myth is that all of the best ideas in the world have already been taken. And this seems to be, people just look back at the past and see all these great things that happened. For example, if you think back in the internet, a long while ago, everybody used Alta Vista for search engine. It was the best in the entire world, did everything. And Larry and Sergey came up with a different way of doing searches that was going to be targeted or sort of put to the end user with a better kind of result. When they came up with a new kind of search engine, and so did a large number of other people all at the same time. And the end result was that Google won, and everybody else seemed to have lost. But that idea was new at the time. So why are all the best ideas taken if they could think up one? Or Facebook. Why is Facebook a great idea, but you can't come up with one now? Another problem with this whole best ideas are taken process is that if you think that, that's basically you're assuming a defeatist attitude, and that's going to translate into your product, how you develop it, and what you do with it. You're assuming you've already failed because I can't come up with a brilliant idea. Another great one is that only smart ideas sell. And if you consider that for a second, if you take a look at MS-DOS when it first came out with Microsoft and compared it to CP/M, the competing operating system, the major competing operating system, CP/M was way better. MS-DOS was purchased by IBM from some other company for $50,000. They just bought something and shoved it at IBM. So that wasn't a smart idea in itself of doing that operating system. And also, for smart ideas, customers don't buy the idea itself. They want an implementation, something that solves their problem. And I can give you a whole history of really, really stupid ideas. Pet Rock, that sold millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of stuff. Beanie Babies, it's the same thing as somebody has been making for a million years, a stuffed animal. But marketed in the right way, it turned into one of the best ideas for its decades of use. And finally, a long while ago, back in the 1950s, people came up with something called a Micker gauge. We do check writing software. And this is a piece of plastic glued to a piece of cardboard, and you slide your check into it, and it helps you figure out where you print things on your check. So, it seems like a great idea back in 1950. Banks used to give these away for free to people writing checks. And then eventually they stopped doing that, and there are a bunch, 50, 60 companies making them and selling them. Our company did check writing software, so it sounded like this would be something I could bundle with my check writing software. And at first we took ads from other companies to sell their stuff via our website. And after a while they weren't interested in placing ads, but they would give us a link, and if our customer clicked on the link to buy one of these gauges from them, we got $1 or $2 or something. And after a while, that was making some money, and thought, well, why don't I find out who actually makes these things and buy some of them? So I bought a few of them and bundled them with software, and they sold. So I bought some more in a bigger batch, and those sold. And then I called them back up to buy some more, and they went, oh, it's going to be about 60 to 90 days until we can get some more of these made. And once again, it's a piece of plastic glued to a piece of cardboard. So I said, this cannot be this hard to make. So I went and had some of these made, and you had to make like 500 of them and risk $1,000 in printing. And after a while, I found out that we sold all 500, and then I had to make 1,000, and then I had to make 10,000. And so now we've taken a really stupid, old idea and moved up. I made a website for this product alone. There's no other website doing it. I don't know why. And now we sell $4,000, $5,000 a month of stupid Micker gauges that are nothing more than a piece of plastic and paper glued together. And they cost $2 to make, and they go for $60, $70. So there's a really dumb idea, sells really well, and it's just doing it better than somebody else is doing it. Another common misconception is that the idea itself is the most important part of your business. But what actually matters is your customers. Does your idea actually solve a customer's problem? Are they going to be interested in giving you money to solve their problem? And to do that, you have to know who your customers are. What are their problems? What are they interested in? You have to understand why they're going to buy from you, or why are they buying from your competition. You also, in bringing out a product, have to worry about who's on your team helping you build this. Are they going to help you build something positive? Are they going to contribute positively to the overall product itself? And finally, what are the risks in building something like this? Do I need investment? How hard is it going to be to get this to come to fruition? Am I pushing technology, or is this something as stupid as a Micker gauge that anybody can make? We can go on to people myths. one of the things most commonly heard is failure is the best teacher, which is a quote by Samuel Smiles. And it directly belies another quote that's just as famous. Confucius said, "By 3 methods you can learn wisdom. First, by reflection, which is the noblest. Second, by imitation, which is the easiest. And finally, by experience, which is the bitterest." The problem with learning from failure is that oftentimes when you fail, you haven't a clue as to why you actually failed. You built this beautiful product and you've got it out and it's not selling. Well, how do you learn from that? And even if you identify exactly what you did wrong and that company has gone right down the tubes because you failed and you started a new company doing something different, are you going to correctly implement the solution that you figured out for the first problem to work on the second one? Or are you going to be rushed in the development and skip all that and go right down the tubes again? And finally, they did some great research back in 2009 with monkeys and MRIs on their brain. And they gave them little tasks to learn. And some of them they made fail all the time, and others they made succeed. And they measured which one learned the best. And it turned out that by rewarding success, monkeys learned much faster and were much better at remembering what they were doing. So it seems to say that success was the best teacher and failure was the absolute worst. Another common people myth is the Steve Jobs myth. I'm the one. Everybody thinks they're going to be the next Steve Jobs or the next Sergey Brin or David Packard or Mark Zuckerberg. But those guys have an attitude, and if you're copying their attitude and you're just starting out, that probably is not appropriate. You're typically working with somebody else, at least one other person in the company, and that kind of attitude might not sit well with your coworkers. There's only a very small chance that you're going to be that successful in any case, so that behavior is probably inappropriate and might lead to problems within your team and within all your coworkers. Another common people misconception is that you can just go out and hire somebody really brilliant. Oftentimes they like to buy brilliant people and put them on a board of directors, and they develop some previous wonderfully successful product. That product made millions of dollars, so they're going to do the same thing for our company. And you're assuming, A, that the person you hired is actually responsible for the success of that product, and they may be partially responsible, they may be totally responsible, or more likely, they're just a part of a team. And also, knowing that somebody, say, made the best iPod in the world doesn't necessarily mean that person can make the best ebook reader or a sales piece of software. So their success might be specific to something and not necessarily your product. You have to analyze that before you decide you're going to pay somebody a large amount of money to transfer their success to you. Another people myth is that you need teamwork, and that's all about building consensus. And success doesn't really depend on a consensus among everybody on your team. You need a leader who's directing the team, making it go in some specific direction. Japan, for example, is a place that has taken consensus to the highest possible level. Everything is done by consensus from the team group up to leadership, and the end result is that not too much ever happens. It's like a gigantic corporation where all the corporate layers have interfered with everything that gets things done. Finally, consider that everybody's opinion, or all people's opinions, are not equal. Somebody came up with the idea for this. Somebody's a driving force for your product or service. That person's ideas are the ones that are supposed to be taking precedence over some guy who is in engineering and down on the fine, small, lower level of this product. Another common one we see, especially if you're here as a programmer or an engineer, is what you think matters. And you'll be working hard on some product, programming it, working away at it, and you'll ask your friends, how does this look? How does this work? Are you happy with this? And they'll all go, yeah, this is great. Well, you just asked 5 people who are exactly the same as you for their opinions on something that you're not going to sell to those 5 people or to yourself. Their opinions don't really matter. What matters is what your customers think about things. So if you limit your input to just a small circle of people, and typically if they're the same as you, your output is going to be limited. What you actually need to do is talk to your customers or potential customers and find out what they think, what is important to them. Something that your parents always told you, it's not who you know, but what you know. Well, the opposite is typically true in the world of business. Knowing people, which is part of the reason why you come to one of these conferences, can be very, very important. Most people, when they come up with, say, a brilliant idea, are able to implement one small piece of that brilliant idea. They might be a programmer. Maybe they're a great salesperson. Maybe they're a great business person with business contacts. Well, they know how to do their area of things, but that's not enough to produce a product that sells or a business that grows. You need other people with other talents. So how do you find those other people if you're just a small little person who's got no other acquaintances? Go to meetings like this, network, find other people, and just for a simple thought experiment, think about you came up with a brilliant idea and you got your brother-in-law to work on it with you and you're going to launch this. How will that go if instead of that you knew Bill Gates and he was your partner in the product? And you don't necessarily have to have a Bill Gates, but having somebody who has better experience in another area than you do and is well known is often a ticket or a stepping point on the way to success. Another myth that we see in technology is just hire a bunch of really brilliant people and let them go. And when you do that, that's sort of similar to the consensus thing, except it's the exact opposite of consensus. You'll have 5 people running in different directions and a product that doesn't do anything because everybody did their own thing. Once again, you need direction. You need overall intelligence. Somebody has to be in charge and taking responsibility for the overall product. We have some more general business myths that relate to business mythology. This one you see in the ownership myth in the On Startups forum all the time. Somebody has an idea for a business, and they can be a salesperson, they can be a programmer, they can be a great business strategist, and they think, I want to own 100% of this company because that gives me complete control and I'm going to make the most money out of that. And that is a complete and total myth. If you're not capable of bringing all pieces of this thing together, which means you have to be brilliant at your programming, brilliant at marketing, brilliant at coming up with new ad campaigns, and brilliant at connections and business savvy, then you're going to need to hire some other people to bring this all together. And typically what you end up with in a startup is a number of co-founders. So without the co-founders, I might build my business, and after 10 years, I've done everything myself, and I'm really good at it, and I've got to a business that's about this big. But if I had hired a brilliant salesperson and a brilliant business person, my business might be this big. So if this was, I'm doing $10,000 a month in sales, and this is $1 million a month in sales, if I only own 49% of that $1 million in sales business, I think I'm way better off than owning 100% of the $10,000 a month in sales business. So giving away part of your company is often how you get to a high level or higher level of success. And one of the most common questions on the On Startups forum is, how much of my company should I give away? And you'll find somebody with a great business idea and they're a business person. They go, I'm just going to hire a programmer, and I can't afford to pay him, so I have to give him some equity. Should I give him 1% or 2% or 5%? And what you have to do is put yourself into everybody's position other than your own. If it takes 3 people to build this company, and you can't do without all 3 of them, aren't they going to feel kind of unhappy if they are contributing equally to you and they get 1% or 5% of the company while you get 80% or 90%? Typically, the most common businesses that succeed, new technology businesses that succeed are the ones that divide things up fairly equally or as close as possible. Maybe the guy who came up with it keeps 40% and gives 30% to each of his other co-founders. And eventually, of course, you're going to be diluted when you do that you're going to take in venture capital, more money comes in, your ownership goes down. But if everybody starts at what they consider fair for themselves, you have a much better chance of success than if you just keep things for yourself. Another common business myth is the customer is always right, and we know that if you've ever talked on the phone to your own customers, they're usually wrong or crazy or just annoying. If you follow this myth and you do everything each one of your individual customers want, what you're going to end up with is a product that has 8 trillion things in it, and it's completely unwieldy. Most of your customers don't want A or B or C. There's one guy who's really loud and obnoxious and keeps calling over and over again. He wants this little feature, but it's going to encumber the entire product. So you don't want to listen to each individual customer. You want to listen to the overall customer experience. You have to balance the customer's needs, individual needs, against your customer base's overall needs. Another one, there's no competition for my product. If you think that, you've either come up with some unmet human need that no one has ever figured out before, or you're just deluded. Everything has an existing solution. When Henry Ford decided to come out with a car that drove around on the ground, there were ways to get around before that. People could walk places. You could take a horse. You could take a train. He didn't come up with an original idea. He came up with a different idea. And there was competition, and you address your market based on what that competition is. So you need to understand your competition. Even if you think you have the most brilliant idea in the world, somebody somewhere has solved the problem and is doing it in a different way than you are. Understand what they're doing, and that will tell you how you are doing it better, and you can convey that to your customers and convince them to come to you. There's a whole methodology, business methodology, called the red ocean, blue ocean strategy. They like to give fancy names to things so you can use them in business school. And this whole thing revolves around the blue ocean is an area you create that has no competition. You've invented something, and you're going to create your own market. And the red ocean is, they've solved the same kind of problem, but there's a whole bunch of competition. So why would you want to go into the place that has competition? You want to create your own market. That sounds like a great idea until you start thinking about the risk to this. And the first risk is that when you create your blue ocean strategy with no competition, there are no customers there. They don't even know you exist. So how are you going to tell them you exist? And how much is it going to cost to tell them that? Once you develop your own market in this blue ocean theory, you've got a market going and you've spent millions of dollars or hundreds of dollars, whatever you can afford. You've got your market growing, and all of a sudden your competition over in the red market that has lots of competition is going, hey, this guy's doing things in a different way. Well, let's go over there too. And you've got competition anyway. So the red ocean, blue ocean strategy is a lot like the I don't have any competition. You really can't build something and then say there's never going to be any competition. Another myth, spending money to make money. A lot of people think that all I have to do is ramp up my expenses, build more of this, pay more for this, and I'm going to make way more money. And the first thing you always have to remember is that great equation there. Your profit is income minus expenses. If you're doing, for example, AdWords, and you're spending, say, $1,000 a month on AdWords, and you just go, well, I'm generating $10,000 a month in sales. If I double the AdWords to $2,000, will that double my sales to $20,000 a month? And the answer is, there's absolutely no way to tell without doing a really expensive experiment. You can't assume that things scale linearly. You could be, in your AdWords campaign, reaching every possible person who is interested in your widget right now. So when you double your spending, you get 0 increase in new sales. You could get double your new sales, or maybe even triple your new sales. But unless you have some way of measuring your return on investment, measuring when I double my sale or double my advertising, what happens to my sales, and is the result of my increase in sales or decrease in sales due to that doubling in advertising? If you can't track that, you shouldn't be doing things. Another common business myth is that venture capital is the answer. And in reality, there are two different ways to grow businesses. You can build a business simply through very slow and measured growth. It's a lot like, say, exercising at your local gym. You go to the gym, you work out every day, and you slowly get stronger. In the business, you take the income from your current sales and use it to buy more product and build better products. Another possible way to do things is you seek outside investment. You get investors to give you money. And this is a lot like, instead of going to the gym, I take shots of steroids, and I can grow my muscles really, really fast. And it does make your business grow really, really fast initially. But potentially, you can lose complete control of your business because suddenly somebody else owns most of it, or you become dependent on outside amounts of money coming into you. And if you don't continually have more money coming into your firm, all of a sudden, your sales don't match the expenditures for your employees, for your inventory. So you have to keep that in mind when you're deciding whether to go for business capital or slow growth. So don't assume venture capital is going to always help you. Startups are nimble, a typical sort of anti-corporate advertising or business myth, that we hate the corporate world, we want to make this company, and we're going to be really nimble, jump around, and it's going to be great, and our end goal is to become a corporation that's big and makes millions of dollars. I'm going, wait a minute. Didn't you just say that you want to be this, but you're striving to become a corporation? They seem to be contradictory. Startups need to have crisp decision making, and so do businesses, big businesses. And the biggest problem big businesses have is a fight against continuing caution, and you can do that in both a startup and you can do that in a corporation if you build it right. There's also a feature-rich myth for technology. You just want to keep increasing making your product or service do every possible thing it could ever do. You pile feature after feature until you get such a confusing conglomeration of things that your customer base starts to fade away. Meanwhile, your competitors that kept telling their customers that they were going to put all these features in, they watched you and went, I don't think we're going to put all these features in. I think things will work better without them. And they end up getting your customers who've given up because they can't figure out how to make your product work. Once again, you have to put yourself into the position of your customers. What makes them happy? The majority of them, because you don't want to satisfy every possible one. Another business myth is that either people or funding are going to flock to my firm. Most companies aren't single people companies. They might start out that way, but eventually you need employees or partners or founders, co-founders. How are they going to find you? Are they just magically going to know that you're wonderful and come over? It's a lot like advertising. How are your customers going to find you if they don't know you've ever existed? And if they do find you, how are they going to know that you're a good place to work, say if you're looking for a co-founder or for employees? Especially with co-founders, that's a partnership, and that's a lot like a marriage. And when you have one co-founder, two co-founders, or three in your business, that's like having a sort of a plural marriage. And then if you add in venture capital to that, that's another partnership. And you've got to balance all these different partners to make things work properly. So don't bet on people or money flocking to you. You've got to make it happen. Another simple myth is that I'm projecting what my company is going to build and what the market is like. And I'm just building my product and go, yeah, in 2 years it's going to be this, and in 3 years it's going to be that, and in 4 years it's going to be like this. Well, think about Microsoft. They came out with MS-DOS. And what would a 10-year plan for MS-DOS have looked like in the first year? Would they have known Windows was even a possibility? Would they have known that their DOS product was no longer even going to exist? It was gone? That's a myth that you can predict things very far in the future. And also, as you become successful in your own business, you're going to discover that you're going to attract competition, and that's going to change the marketplace. So your predictions need to be continually changed to keep things going. Another very popular business myth is that you've got to work on your product and it's got to be complete. It's got to be perfect before you can bring it out to your customers. And as everybody who's ever done software knows, software is never finished. It's never done. Neither is hardware. You can work your best and build some great thing, but you can always think of something new to do it tomorrow. And all that's going to do is keep delaying your product. If you wait around for your product to be perfect, your competition is going to throw out their first product, which is probably pretty bad, and then they're going to have fixed most of the problems, and that's come out, and you're still grinding along at coming out with your first product, and you no longer even have a market. They've taken it all. What you actually need to look for is what's called the MVP, the minimum viable product. What's the minimum thing you can crank out in the shortest amount of time that your customer base will be interested in? Once you've got that, think about the fact that you can move on and say, well, I've got these customers, and now I come out with some new features that I glue into my old product, and I sell updates to my existing customer base. So you can actually make money by not giving them a complete product before you start. Some quick advertising or sales myths. Best one is my product is going to go viral. I'm going to depend on something that's completely outside my own control to build my entire business. It's a lot like saying I've got a 5-year-old son and he's going to be a star of the NBA, so I have no need for a college account or much of anything. I'll just buy a basketball and a basketball net and that should do it. It's not going to happen. If it does happen, it's an accident, and if your business strategy is based on accidents, you're probably not going to be too successful. And how many can actually name a company that's succeeded with viral product marketing? Maybe one or maybe two things you can think of. So that doesn't seem like a great business plan. Another myth is that customers are only interested in low prices. And what you have to do is differentiate, am I delivering a commodity or am I delivering something that's not a commodity? If you're making, say, consumer software or games or that type of entertainment thing, that might be a commodity and price is probably fairly important. If you're developing a business product, those typically are nowhere near as price sensitive, and there have been a large number of people who have experimented with business products and found that taking a business product that started out at $49.95 and raising the price to $149.95 and giving it nothing new increased sales. And it increased the number of sales, and let's add in then the extra $100 per unit profit that it generated. Businesses aren't all that price sensitive. If you can deliver something that's going to satisfy their problem, they're going to be happy to buy it. So price is based on the value you provide to your customer and the amount of competition. This is a Jessica Duell question. You should go to her session, and I'm using her magic clicker. I had to give her a plug. Social media is your ticket to success. And a lot of people think that we have to be on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all these different places, and that's going to somehow make my business a success. Well, each one of those social media outlets has a specific audience. And if your product doesn't fit that audience, it's probably not going to help you very much. And it might just waste all of your time that you could be spent doing something much better. Is Facebook going to help me selling check writing software? I don't think so. How many people on Facebook actually, A, use that, and B, are looking on Facebook for that kind of software? And the answer is probably 0. So I don't really waste my time with the Facebook page. And once again, if you're going to do some kind of advertising, say social media as a form of advertisement, you need a way to measure your success. Otherwise, you're just throwing money and hoping that it does something. So you need to see if you've got a return on your investment. How do you track whether Facebook gave you X number of new sales? And if you can't track it, don't do it. Another popular myth is that this is sort of a vanity one. That the number of sales is the most important thing, and the mantra is sales are vanity, cash is sanity. If I sell a product for $100 and I'm selling 1,000 a month, I'm making a fair amount of money. If I sell a product for $10 and I sell 100,000 a month, but I make 10 cents on each one, the first product is sounding a lot better than the second product. I don't care how many sales I make if I'm only making 10 cents or 2 cents on each one, which comes out to a lot of the apps that we see in the app stores for 99 cents. You can take an awful lot of sales on 99-cent apps when the people selling them for you are taking the first 30%, then you're getting even less, before you start to make the same money that you'd make selling say a desktop application to a lot fewer people at $100 or $200 a shot. Another myth for people is under-promising and over-delivering. You used to follow this in consulting. You'd always promise your customer to have something done by like way too long, and then you deliver it to them way early and they'd be happy. And we see that with software, hardware, different kinds of products. But it has a negative effect on the customers. Customers see this long delivery time or lack of features, and they begin to think your product is inferior because they can see other products that have these things or that are delivered faster. And that can mark your brand as inferior, and that gives you sort of a negative spiral down. So you don't want to stretch your under-promising and over-delivering. We have one more technology myth, and then we can open this up to any questions you might have. And this one you see a lot in the, once again, in the on startups thing, that the only place where you can do a startup is Silicon Valley or California. That's the high-tech world. And if you think about things, there are millions of new businesses started all over the world each day, and how many of them start in Silicon Valley? And the answer is a minuscule percentage. People make coffee shops, people make software products, people make everything. And you start where it's either logical for you or for your customer base to start. And anybody have any questions or comments? Or it's lunchtime.